Welcome to the David Seaton Show. We are so pleased to have joining us today Stephanie Trussell. She is the Republican nominee for House District 42 in Illinois, the Republican nominee, and that House District 42, that covers which cities again?
Well, I'm in all of my three major cities or villages are in DuPage County, which I'm excited, just one county. Lombard, Glen Ellen, and Lisle, a little bit of a couple other places, but those are the major three places that I'll be campaigning in, yes.
Okay, That's great. So for our listeners who are watching this right now, they might recognize you because you were actually lieutenant governor for the previous Republican who ran against Pritzker in the last election. Go ahead and tell our listeners about that.
Well, I was in a five-way race with Darren Bailey back in the last gubernatorial cycle, and we won the primary, 57% of the vote, and then we went up against J.B. Pritzker, and surprise, surprise, we lost. But it was an amazing journey, 102 counties, visiting them multiple times. I grew up in Chicago. I moved to the suburbs in '94, but I've spent all of my life up here north of 80. So having an opportunity to visit all over the state, especially south of 80 and the farmers, and it's just so much that I wasn't aware of that Illinois was all about. So that was an amazing journey, but I'm happy to be on a journey where I don't have to drive for 5 hours. So it's great just to be in one county.
Not having to go back down to Springfield.
Right, exactly. Well, I'm looking forward to when I win, I'm looking forward to going to Springfield, but right. Springfield is nothing. I don't know if a lot of people know this. You can drive for 5 hours and you're still in Illinois. You can't get out of this place, so that was it was quite a journey.
And I was talking about this last time we had on Pamela Denise Long.
Yes.
She's also running as a Republican in Illinois. And I was talking to her, basically when you get south of Kankakee, Illinois is a red state.
It's a different state.
But you're running in DuPage County, and up until about 10 or 15 years ago, DuPage County had been a red county. It's kind of trended more Democrat as of late. But you're trying to replant the Republican flag in DuPage County.
You're being kind. You're being very kind. When I moved to DuPage in 1994, it was one of the reddest counties in the country, not just in our state. And J.B. Pritzker, the last cycle, nicknamed us Blue Page County. And on April 2nd, when we woke up to the results of the municipal election, I'm like, okay, J.B., you win. Yes, a lot of people have come out from DuPage County. From Cook County, because the quality of life is great, it's affordable, the schools are great. Why not move? But they brought their voting habits with them, and they've chipped away, and I looked at our board, unrecognizable. In so many other seats. I remember the time I woke up in the congressional, I woke up to having a Democrat as my congressman, and I'm like, where am I? I'm in DuPage County, this isn't supposed to happen. So I am determined to make DuPage County red again. I want to chip away back, okay, you guys got it, now we got to work hard to get it back, because I'm concerned as a business owner, as a mother of five, I have 5 kids. 1 is married, so I count her as a kid. 5 of my adult children live in DuPage County, and my business is there. And more importantly, my granddaughter's there. So I'm worried about the quality of schools, and I want the quality of life that drew me to DuPage in 1994. I want that for the people that live there now.
So let's talk about this. Illinois has a supermajority in Springfield of state senators and
Democrats, I call it super duper majority, right?
Super majority. And that's what happened the last time there was a Republican governor in Illinois, Bruce Rauner. He couldn't get anything through because you had this super majority of Democrats in charge in Springfield. So, I don't want to necessarily make this about Democrat, Republican.
I don't mind.
but yeah, because you post on Facebook often.
Right. Very vocal. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so from an ideological perspective, because you and I are both business owners, Illinois has never met a tax that they didn't like,
love and embrace, and
a lot of people have left Illinois because it's just too expensive to live in this state. So tell our listeners what's your tax ideology, or what's your governing ideology as it pertains to taxes in the state of Illinois, and how do you think you can impact that if you are elected?
Well, first of all, I was shocked to learn that in this last session, they introduced 6,700 bills, over 6,700. Who can even keep up with that? It's as if they think they were sent to Springfield just to look busy, so let's introduce all these bills. And as you said, taxes and fees are driving hardworking people out of the state. Taxes and fees are also making corporations and companies leave because they can't afford to operate here. I'm all about, obviously, as a conservative, I'm all about conserving what's great, but making it easier for people to operate, making it easier for regular people just to stay here and live. So obviously get rid of some of these taxes. We cannot ignore the numbers. J.B. Pritzker can get up and talk about how wonderful this state is, but if it's so great, why are people leaving? If it's so great, why do we have some of the highest property taxes? We're always at the top of the bad list and at the bottom of the good list. Some of the highest property taxes, cable taxes. I mean, if they could figure out a way to tax our oxygen, they would. And I hate to give them any ideas. And so I'm all about, it's not just, waste, fraud, and abuse. Yes, we can address that. But let's try to get rid of some of these things that are making people feel like I have to leave the state. And I just fell deeper in love with Illinois as a result of traveling 102 counties. And people shouldn't have to leave wonderful Illinois. I have friends now that have bought houses in Florida. I've been invited to Florida, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And I was recently, 3 weeks ago, with my friend who's about to retire. Her husband, they're going to move to Wisconsin. They have their home already. And we looked out on Lake Michigan, and she said, "Isn't this beautiful?" And I turned to her, I said, this is the same lake we have in Illinois. The taxes are better here, but we're looking at the same lake, but people would rather be on this side of the lake because it's too expensive to be on the other side of the lake.
So if you had to identify it, and because Illinois is a microcosm of the United States when we're talking about the ideology from Democrats and the progressive left on if we can just get a little bit more money from you, then we can go ahead and solve the problem. What is it about Democrats, specifically in Illinois, in your opinion, that's their go-to? Because we constantly hear this, tax the rich, make them pay their fair share, and that hasn't really resonated with the voters.
Isn't that interesting when people like J.B. Pritzker tax the rich and he somehow thinks that he's not rich? I don't know what category he thinks he's in. But every fee or tax goes after the regular man. That tax that they impose on DoorDash or whatever, J.B. Pritzker, that's not going to affect him and the people like that. Where are these taxes that are supposedly going after the rich? And try to pit us against each other to make rich people the villains. Like they're not paying their fair share. If you do know anything about basic math, you don't have to have Econ 101 to know that if a percentage of my income is, if I make more money than you, I'm paying more taxes than you automatically. So I should be penalized even more at a higher percentage just because I'm successful. And this just, I don't know how they define rich. I don't mind rich people. They're not evil people. And no offense, I know you're working hard so you can have an inheritance for your kids and grandkids. And one day, are they going to call my kids rich? Or I hope so. My grandkids are wealthy, or they think that you're in this special category. We're talking about everyday people just working hard to achieve the American dream. And it seems like the Democrats just want to trip you up everywhere you go to get this. Like they see you as a walking dollar sign. How can we squeeze just a little bit more out of these people instead of cutting some of these departments that we have and things that we know we're wasting money on?
And it's so interesting that you frame it like that, because when I think about how the Democrats say the rich need to pay their fair share, they're talking about taking money, like you said, from hardworking people and then distributing it to other people who are, let's just go ahead and say it, who don't work as hard.
Right.
Or
don't work at all.
Or don't work at all.
Right.
Because here's where I disagree with Democrats. Democrats seem to have this idea that if everyone doesn't get an equal outcome, then there must be something systemic in the system that's causing this disparity.
Right.
You and I are both business owners. You and I both took the risk to go out and borrow money and to open a business and to run it and employ people and market that business. We have to work every day.
There's no day off when you
exactly.
have a business, right?
So is it fair then for the government to come to someone like you or me and to say, we're going to take some of your income and give it to someone else who didn't want to take the same risk as we took.
Right. You know, I have 5 children, so I joke it's a numbers game. You're going to get a socialist. I have this discussion with my socialist middle kid, and I talk about that all the time with him. And he says the rich. And I said, some people might look at your dad and think that we're rich because we own this business and we're not entitled to the same, I don't know, consideration, but we're, like you said, we're the ones taking all the risk. And bigger the corporation, the more risk they're taking when they're moving into neighborhoods and they're deciding to open up a grocery store when nobody else would. And so to think that for some reason we should be targeted because we're deemed as successful, but it's all about, you know, I think about growing up in America, being born to a 17-year-old orphan, and on the west side of Chicago is where I grew up. And I always felt that as long as you were born in America, you already hit the genetic lottery. All you have to do is work hard. My mom never sat us down and said, if you work hard, you get it. She just showed us. My mother worked really hard, kept getting promoted, improved her skills. She didn't graduate from high school. She got a GED recently. But I think about my mom who went to secretarial school without a high school diploma and became one of the best executive assistants because she worked hard. And that's all I keep thinking. I think about all the examples that came before me. Everybody hustled in my neighborhood on the west side. Everybody had a regular job, but they also had a side hustle. And that's the work values that I hope that I inherited, and that's what I poured into my children. And rich people, whether they inherited it or they worked hard for it, they're still people that have to take risk, and they can lose it all too. They just can't willy-nilly allow the government to come in and decide where we're entitled to take more of it because you have more.
So let's go ahead, since we're talking about taxes, we have to talk about the big, beautiful bill that just got passed in DC.
Right.
And a lot of people are giving pushback on the cuts that are being made to Medicaid and to SNAP benefits. And whenever I have a conversation with someone on the left and I talk about the waste, fraud, and abuse that's there, they either dismiss it like it's nothing, like it's just a figment of my imagination, or they will come back and say, well, these rich corporations, they get tax breaks. They get, so what's the difference between them taking money and giving money to people who are in need? So let's go back to the first point. Is there waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicare and in the SNAP program?
Well, those programs were originally intended for people with children, people that were disabled, people that couldn't work, not for able-bodied single men and women. Let's go back to the pre-COVID regulations. That's all we're asking, because that's what it was. And I remember growing up, people that were on public assistance were always people with children. It was never a grown man with 2 arms and 2 legs getting this, or that was called general assistance or something. But it was nothing that you would brag about, or it was almost a little bit of shame attached to that, because what does the Bible say? Those that work eat. And we don't mind helping people temporarily, but the notion that asking someone to work 20 hours a week for what they're getting, I don't think that's just ridiculous. And remember, back in the day with Clinton, was it that you had work requirements? I always thought, this is just me, not a college graduate, thinking that if all of your kids are in school 6 hours a day, this is the time for you. Now, maybe when they're younger, we don't want you to be putting them in daycare, that's fine. But now that all of your children are now in full-time school, wouldn't you be somewhere trying to improve your skills? Because you don't want to be on government assistance forever. So I know the left is just hyperbolic. Oh, children are going to die, and all these people are getting cut. If we don't cut the waste, fraud, and abuse away from that program, we won't have the money for the people that was intended to. So I'm not, the sky is falling. Let's get rid of the people that shouldn't be on it to make it a more viable program. And if we require people just to improve their skills or get a job, I'm not mad at that situation. Now, big, beautiful bill, I'm of the belief, even as a Trump supporter, I don't know if everything they could be big and beautiful at the same time. I want to go back to the days, was there ever a day when it was one item per bill, throwing all this stuff in there, you're going to get some bad stuff with some good stuff. But overall, he's getting a lot done. He's getting done what people voted for him to do. That's why they put him in office.
Really interesting that you dropped that Bible verse. For those of you who weren't paying attention, she dropped that Bible verse that says, if you don't work, you shouldn't eat. And the reason why I want to just take a moment there is because whenever we have a conversation about immigration. The Democrats love to talk about that Bible verse that says, welcome the stranger, or welcome the I forget the exact word, but they love to, it's amazing to me how people on the left, they chide the Republicans for, embracing religion, but then they will selectively, choose
at their convenience, cherry pick the ones that they want. It won't even be the whole scripture. And they talk about immigration, and Jesus was an immigrant. I'm like, Mary and Joseph were traveling to obey the laws of the census. That's why they just didn't come in and bust in and do whatever. So, I love when they do that. And it's so important that they think of Republicans as being heartless and we don't care and we want to cut programs. We're very compassionate. We love everyone, but we're not helping people by hobbling them with these programs that don't hold them accountable. If you live in Section 8, that's what it's there for. You want to get a hand up, you want to get an opportunity to do better. But if your granddaughter's moving into the same Section 8 complex or getting the same thing, something's wrong. I mean, I don't have to tell my whole story, but I know that every job I got, I wanted to be promoted, and every opportunity, I took advantage of a couple programs coming up, and then as soon as I was able, I got off those programs because I wanted to be self-sufficient. So it's nothing wrong. We want churches and social service agencies to help people because you never know what might happen in your situation, but it should be a temporary situation. It shouldn't be your inheritance and that everybody is entitled to this forever.
Again, it's so interesting the way that you're framing that, because I often talk to people and they will look at individuals who are getting these benefits and they'll say, well, they're living better than us, which I always say, well, I don't know what you're doing with your life. They're not living better than me.
Speak for yourself.
But to your point, you're talking about this entitlement.
Yes.
Because what I always respond and say to that individual is, that person who lives on Section 8 for their entire lives, they never are going to own something that they can leave to their children or leave to their grandchildren. It seems like we have a cultural deficit that we need to address. I just wonder, is it reasonable to think that we can address the culture deficit through politics?
I kind of, and I love being Black. As a Republican, I always feel like that's a disclaimer I have to say. I love Black people. Some of my best friends are Black. My family's Black. And I love being Black. I love growing up in the 60s and 70s, the Black culture, the food, and everything about it. And our culture has been usurped by these people that have redefined what that's not our inheritance. That's not who we are. These programs and you hear a Black activist and say, if they cut this is going to disproportionately hurt Black people. Why? We shouldn't be disproportionately hurt by some government program. We got to bring shame back to a little bit to what's going on. Used to, when you have to use those food stamps in that book back in the day, you put them away. There's no shame to it now. If you go on YouTube, there are pages and pages of women living in Section 8, making a whole show out of it, and then they get to come up, and then everybody starts to donate on the Amazon page. Nobody's working. Some of them have a man next to them. I'm like, so what? So we got to get our culture back with the rich and pride and what it meant to be a Black American, and that we were enslaved. And when you think about those people that were enslaved, they were freed. And Frederick Douglass, I believe, said it best. They don't want anything from the government. They just wanted to be left alone. They left the plantations, walked to a college, taught themselves how to read. Some of them got 2 degrees, not just 1. And the government promised them 40 acres and a mule. They didn't get it, so they just said, hey, I got to do what I got to do because I live in America. I helped build this country. And this whole divide that this isn't our country is crazy. Our ancestors helped build this country, and I'm going to live my inheritance. To me, my inheritance is reparations because I get to live in the greatest country in the world. And so we got to bring some pride back to what it means to be Black and not let those EBT crowd, nothing wrong with EBT, but if you're making that your life and your culture and you're bragging about it, and it's just something's happened where we're working hard used to be something that we honored. And I think about even when right after Jim Crow and you had the Black father, we had the highest marriage rate, even higher than white people.
Correct.
So you see the Black father with the blue shirt and the metal lunchbox coming home, his wife will cook the dinner and the kids will be around the table. There was pride in watching this dad work hard and being the leader of the family. Good Times is my favorite show when it comes to that, but unfortunately he worked hard and couldn't get him out of projects. That's another story. But I think about how he was a leader of the family, and once they removed remove the protector and the leader of the family in the Black culture, big government tried to replace the dad, but a big government can't read your child a bedtime story, can't check to see what grades you got on your report card, can't go to your basketball game. It's a poor replacement for what it meant to have an intact two-parent loving Black home and what happened. So we got to get our culture back and what it means to be, I'm proud to be Black. I love being Black. And it's a great legacy, but somehow we've lost our way.
So I'm glad we even went this direction, because the perception by a lot of people is that the Republican Party is this racist party, that they don't like minorities, but that did change a lot in this last election. You had a higher percentage of Latino and African American males who voted for Trump because they were voting their economic interest first, and they didn't allow the Democratic narrative of, hey, they hate you over there, so your only choice is to come here. It's basically the narrative that they put out there. But you're a Republican, you're an African American. Is the Republican Party a racist or sexist party?
I love when people say that. I've been a Republican, I guess, since 1994. I came out of the closet. Years later, I was afraid to admit that I was a Republican. Started listening to talk radio, and I realized that my values more aligned with the Republican Party. I'm in this packaging, born in Chicago. Of course, I was a Democrat and voted that way. And then once I started listening to issues and realizing if the Democrat Party was so great for us, why are all the cities ruled by Democrats? Why are Black people suffering disproportionately? And I heard that too. Republicans are racist white people that don't care about you. And my just reception and my feeling about being around patriots, it's just a warm kumbaya, color doesn't matter, sex doesn't matter. It's just, we love, well, most of my friends, my conservatives are Christians that love God, love our country, love our flag, and it didn't matter what color I am. But when I came out of the closet, unfortunately, as a Republican to my Democrat families and friends, that's when I saw a little bit of pushback, calling me a sellout, calling me, just so many things, being unfriended, you can't invite it to the picnic, so to speak. But the perception that the Republican Party, which was the party that worked to free the slave and worked very hard for civil rights, is a racist party, is just ridiculous. And even in Chicago, this last cycle, so many Black people showing up at City Hall saying, I am not voting Democrat anymore because look what they're doing with the immigrants, getting things, because I'm a descendant of enslaved Americans, and the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment was promised to us, not to people that jumped over here illegally. And they realized these empty storefronts and empty businesses that they've been begging for a community center for years, they never had money, but suddenly there's enough money to put 300 migrants in there. That's when they woke up. And so I encourage people, they're afraid to come to Republican events because how is it going to be perceived? Are there going to be other Black people? Everybody's waking up and realizing that you got to pick the party according to your values, and you're not going to agree 100% with any party. But as a Christian conservative, those values more align with what I believe in and what works well for Black people in general. And we're very religious people. There's a church on every corner. I just get confused how we can align with a party that loves to call God a liar. So I'm unapologetic about that. I love interacting with Democrats. That's like my favorite thing. I think it's kind of boring to sit in a room full of Republicans. Not that I think I'm going to be able to change their mind, but I love exercising why I'm a Republican and they come back at me why they're a Democrat. And I keep waiting to be wrong, but so far I haven't been wrong in their values. But don't believe the hype. When you go to Republican events, and you're around other people, I've met some of my dear friends just going to a Tea Party rally. We were randomly thousands of people at an event, and now they're my sisters in Christ or brothers in Christ. And so don't believe the hype, but I will admit the Republican Party has ignored the Black community, especially in Chicago. And I had a radio show in Chicago, and I would say to Republican leadership, why aren't we running candidates for mayor? Why aren't we doing this? And they just felt like, well, what's the point? They'll never vote for us. So you've got one party taking your vote for granted and the other party ignoring them. And that's why now it's different. if people are stepping up, Black people are not afraid to come out and say, I'm not a Democrat anymore. And all we need in the Republican leadership in Illinois is to invite those people in. They just want to be invited to the party, say, this is our platform. We believe in school choice. We want to get you out of those failing schools in your zip code, that kind of thing. And we have the best platform, but it's the best kept secret.
Interesting that you mentioned education.
Yeah.
Education, because, and let me just take a step back, because when you look at Illinois, when you look at the United States, but specifically, like I said earlier, Illinois is a microcosm. Mm-hmm. When there's this perception that the only people who are experiencing socioeconomic conditions that are suboptimal mm-hmm. are minorities who live in inner cities. Mm-hmm. And I always tell people, until you go to a rural county mm-hmm. in the United States, where you'll hear people say, "Oh, it's a food desert because you have to travel more than 1 mile to go to a grocery store." You go to rural America, you might have to travel 10 miles. To
Appalachia, those places that we hear so much about, right?
No public transportation.
Right.
Yeah. You can't catch a bus,
right.
Exactly. In rural America,
right.
because again, all of the and I think that's where the cultural difference comes in. Mm-hmm. I think it's because individuals who live in rural America, they have to make it happen. Mm-hmm. They have to figure it out because right. there is no largesse of the government to subsidize what it is that they're doing. And then because you have a larger percentage, a higher percentage of people who live in rural America and rural Illinois mm-hmm. are white, then that's where I think that racial perception or misperception comes in, that the majority of these white people who live in rural America happen to be Republican, but they're not Republican because they're white. They're Republican because, to your earlier point, their ideology lines up with mm-hmm. what the Republican Party espouses, which is pull yourself up by your bootstraps, figure it out. Like you said, you and I as business owners, go out there, take a risk if that's what you want to do, but you can't. I don't want anybody out there waiting on me to pay more taxes so they don't have to work, so they can stay on Section 8 food stamps, whatever.
Yeah, everything. It's a program to pay your utilities now. It's programs on programs. But we talked about education, and that's, to me, I've always been very passionate about education and school choice. My mom had me at 17, but she had a couple landlords that said to her, put your kids in private school, Regina. I don't care if you're late with the rent, but don't put them in Chicago public schools. So I went from second grade through high school to Catholic schools. And so I understand the value of education, but it makes me mad because most people can't make that sacrifice. They don't have the ability to do that. And the schools in their zip codes should be very good schools, should be educating them. And that's not the case. And we spend about $30,000 per kid in Chicago public school system. And those kids, if you just don't believe me, don't believe David, just go on, do your research, and it would break your heart, the percentage of kids that can read math, do their math and reading at grade level, and especially disproportionately failing Black children. And if we can't teach them how to read, how are they going to get a job? How are they going to take care of themselves? It's almost like they're creating this permanent underclass because they can't even fill out a job application.
Well, here's the question though. That's interesting that you said that, because here's the argument I always get into around this subject. I'll use myself as an example. Mm-hmm. I'm older, so I graduated from high school, in the early 90s.
You're older than who? Anyway, I'm old. Go ahead. You're not older than me. No, go ahead.
So I graduated from high school in the early 90s. Mm-hmm. I went to Proviso West High School. Mm-hmm. And in my district, there was Proviso East and Proviso West. Yep. So just for an example, Proviso, when you got to senior year, they offered calculus. Mm-hmm. Well, the handful of students at Proviso East had to be, because there were only 2 or 3 students over there who were able to take it. Mm-hmm. So Proviso used to bus those students over to Proviso West because Proviso West had a full classroom, so they just put in those 3 additional students. Right. What's my point? Are the schools bad because the curriculum is bad, or are the schools bad because the product, the student with which they have to work, that's bad? To your point, if you can't read, then I can't teach you social studies. Right. I can't teach you word problems in math. I can't teach you biology. Mm-hmm. You can't do anything else until you can learn how to read. So if your parents don't work so that's the question. are we blaming schools when, again, we should be blaming culture and parents?
Right. As I said before, when you had the intact family and the dad was working hard, the mom might spend more time focusing. Did you get your homework done? And they had these expectations and saying, this is what we expect, nothing less than this. You can't bring home a C. And now with those structures being removed, who do you blame? Do you blame the teachers? Do you blame the parents? It's like a prong. I mean, the student, teachers, and parents have to be held accountable, but are we passing children on? If you're in 11th grade and you're reading at a 7th grade level, something happened. And, I've seen these news reports on 60 Minutes, and the mama show up and she said, well, he passed everything. I didn't know he couldn't read. Because why would he was getting A's and B's on his report card. And it's just like, whoa, so we got to decide what's more important. And when I talk to my socialist son, who I love, he'll say, Mom, we just don't spend enough money in public schools. And I remind him that we're spending most of our money, but because I went to Catholic schools, the nuns got a whole lot done, more done with less resources. That's all I can say.
Sure.
And so it's something to be held accountable. We have to talk about parents and their responsibility, getting them engaged. And we got to get over this thing that everybody's got to go to college. Remember, we used to focus on trade schools. Now they've convinced all these kids that are barely made it, senior year, we're going to get you into one of these programs in a college that's really, they should be at a junior college, they should be going off to a university, but they've made this program. They're going to get there and fail, and they've got student loan debt. Let's talk about all the great jobs you can get and not have student loans. And you could be an electrician, you'd get your union card at some of these amazing places. And we want people as parents, we want all our kids to graduate from college, but some of our kids are not going to, and that's okay. And we need to be realistic about that and say, let's get these kids in programs. Because right now we talk about coding and all that. Those are the jobs that AI is going to replace, but they're not going to replace welders.
Correct.
They're not going to replace the mechanics and tool and die guys. And you always need an electrician. You always need a plumber. And those
Sure.
are the things that we need to be talking about, bringing pride back into those jobs.
Absolutely. I remember the last church that I went to, and the pastor said, he used to always say that the most important person in society is the pastor. And I used to say to him, until your toilet overflows at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right. Your air conditioner stopped working and it's 90 degrees outside. You said the pastor can come over and pray, but that's not going to get your toilet unplugged. Exactly. And that's for some reason we made like those jobs where you wear a blue shirt, like that's not a noble profession. And as an owner of a hot dog restaurant, I love that most of my customers are people with dirt on their hands, dirt on their fingernails. They come in, they park their truck, and we'll get the people that come in Teslas and their business meetings, and that's great. But that just gives me, when I touch their hands and they've got calluses on it, and that person is feeding their family, one of my favorite family, when they retire and they get to do what they send their kids to college, and it's good, honest, hard work. And we got to bring some dignity back to those kind of jobs.
Do you think that that's something that government can do? Is government the catalyst for that? If government, for example, if government had a student loan program that was as robust for trade colleges, for trade education as they did for universities, I wonder, would that be the catalyst to the cultural change that we need? Because to your point, we know there's white collar, blue collar work. Right. And we need both. Yes. But to your point, it's something happened in our society where we stopped, women in particular, started looking down their noses at a blue collar guy. I'm not going to date a bus driver. I want to date somebody who owns the bus company. Right. That's been a thing. Right. What's her name? I forget the woman who said that. One of those women that said from the Housewives of New York or something. She's horrible. Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. But can the Republican Party, can government play a role in recalibrating how people perceive blue collar work by, like I said, creating a robust system that helps people, matriculate in those professions like they created for formal education.
Well, I get nervous when government gets involved. Big government does few things well. I want them to do what they should be doing well, protecting our borders and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes when big government gets involved, I think private sector a lot of times can do things a lot better and more efficiently. But maybe, Mike Rowe, he's that guy out there talking about those dirty jobs. And after as I traveled to the great state of Illinois, and I took these wonderful tours of these amazing little towns. They look like a set from an old cowboy movie, and they're empty. And people took such pride showing me around, and they would say, we used to manufacture this here, that used to make that. I said that Illinois is the museum of what used to be. And we got to make things here again. We used to be I didn't realize that we provided the roses for the Rose Parade. Here, little Illinois was sending roses to California. I mean, things that we just didn't know because we stopped manufacturing things. It got to be too expensive to manufacture things here. I'm going to say union, but and then everything got sent somewhere else. And so the government can help, but overall, a program or a student loan program, I get nervous. I'm like, how much is going to be waste, fraud, and abused?
Okay.
But I mean, we certainly need a robust campaign from parents and telling their kids, I have a son that's very smart, my youngest, and I've been trying to get him to go into welding. I mean, I always thought he would do this, he would do that, and your dreams sometimes are not their dreams. And
Sure.
I know that that's a dream that I'm like he's an artist. I said, you can be a welder, and then you can still get to be artistic with your welding, and so that's okay. And I think about with my 5 kids, my son that didn't have a college degree bought a house before my daughter that has a master's degree. You just know, it's up to you and how hard you work. But we need to, again, make blue collar jobs cool again, make them, and if we start making things here again, because now that, I'm talking about immigration, and those plants are getting shut down for people that didn't have permission to work here, Americans are showing up to apply for those jobs. And they say, these are jobs Americans won't do. We did them all along. That's how we built this wonderful country, was built on legal immigration and hardworking Americans that didn't mind getting dirt under their fingernails. But if we're going to give you more money to stay home, yeah, those are jobs Americans are like, I'm not doing that. But when you move away from those, take those entitlement programs from them, they have to do those jobs. So that's what we need to do something. As far as I know, a lot of the trade schools are expensive and come up with some way to make it affordable for people. But sometimes these student loans, they get inflated, and the interest, and people, almost like credit card debt. You don't want to take out more than you can handle. And so that's something to think about. But we need a concerted effort just to encourage people. What makes you feel good? Don't go out and get a bunch of student loans in a degree in the mating habits of the tsetse fly in Australia. And you get your degree and you got a master's, and you're like, I can't find a job. You're like, well, you should have thought about that. So then we need to be practical with student loans, yeah.
You make another interesting point when you're talking about we need to make things here again. So let me use a really practical example.
And I love talking about this with you because I love your business aspect of how you think of things. And so I'm ready. Let me get ready. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to use an example that everyone can what's the word I'm looking for?
Relate to. Or
relate to.
understand.
Thank you. Okay. I don't know why I had a brain fart.
No, it's okay.
Something everyone can relate to. Buying furniture. Okay. My wife and I, when we bought the home that we live in now, I insisted that I was going to furnish our family room. So I went and I actually purchased our furniture from Ethan Allen. Ooh. So for those of you who are unaware, Ethan Allen is the company that you go into and you pick your fabric, and they make everything, it's made to order. You're not going into a showroom and just picking something off the floor. It took them about 6 to 8 weeks to manufacture everything, and they delivered it. So we had our entire family room that was decorated.
And you got
by
to
Ethan
pick
Allen.
it out, the design you did? Your wife gave you that freedom? Oh,
yes,
it was
yes.
you. Okay.
She said she was going to do some other rooms.
Okay, that was nice.
But I told her, I said, I insisted that I do this particular room.
Very good.
So again, now you go into Ethan Allen and you buy furniture, again, made in America,
right?
Made by American workers. That bill was, north of $10,000 to furnish this one particular room. With that same amount of money that I spent at Ethan Allen, I could have gone to the Room Place or Bob's Discount Furniture or any of those other places.
And did you have a cup holder and an electric recliner on yours?
I didn't do that one.
You could have got all that at Bob's.
I didn't do that. Yeah. No televisions on the first floor in my house.
What?
So
okay. Are you an American? No, I'm teasing.
But my point is that that American-made furniture was orders of magnitude more expensive than if I had gone into someplace else and bought furniture that was being made overseas.
Right.
So we have to be honest about the fact that as we onshore or reshore these American jobs, because Americans get paid more, in Mexico, they get paid $15 a day for, those same manufacturing jobs, or some of those auto plants down there that are in Mexico.
Right.
Whereas here, they're getting paid $40, $45, $50 an hour, and their benefits,
right.
and their 401k.
And all that, right, yeah.
So are Republicans being honest when they talk about reshoring and onshoring jobs and ignoring the fact that in so doing, it is going to drive prices up? Because to your point, Americans will when they say Americans won't do those jobs.
But you got to pay them a livable wage.
Americans are not going to do those jobs for the prices that you pay the migrant who will perhaps take the money under the table or who will take less because their frame of reference is $15 an hour, $15 a day.
$15 an hour opposed to $15 a day.
Exactly.
And we have to
how do we reconcile that?
Right, but your furniture, Ethan Allen furniture, will be in a antique store one day. They'll say, this is a good quality American-made. That furniture at Bob's and other places where I probably shop, your toddler can push it around with one hand, just move and get this toy because the quality is not that great. But when I think about a widget, something that we make here, and so I always thought, so it's cheaper to make it in China than to make it here. We could make it all the way over there and bring it here, and I can't get this cup for the same price. I'm like, something's wrong with that. And we know it's slave labor in China. We know that when people say, well, we have jobs here that the illegals are doing, I shouldn't say illegals, I know people get offended, people that are here illegally are doing, well, who's going to do that? But that's what they said about slavery. When they said we should free the slaves, well, who's going to pick our cotton? Who's going to do this?
Well,
it's
again,
the same, but we know it's slave labor. We know they're getting paid under the table
but here's the
and
difference,
cutting out Americans.
But here's the difference in your cotton example. The difference in your cotton example is that when the slaves were freed in the United States, the cotton gin had been made, and so at the same time that slavery was abolished, you had the Industrial Revolution. So you had machines that were able to come online that could do the work orders of magnitude, faster and more efficiently than human beings doing it by hand. So that's the only caveat that I would put on that. But that said, I'm just saying that Americans have to understand that if for every job that you bring back from China and Mexico into the United States, and now you have an American making that product has to cost more because you're paying an American a much higher wage to do it.
I mean, but we should take pride in American-made products and know that it wasn't made by some child and working 18 hours a day, those things that we say that we care about, but we just turn a blind eye and we turn over the product and it says made in China. How are our Nikes made? And they're so get egregious about trying to make some Betsy Ross gym shoes, but okay, China, I love my Apple phone, but okay, I'm sorry, okay, Nike and Apple, how are you living up to these standards that you put everybody else to? We need to make sure that I want Americans to make t-shirts. Is that okay? I want to know that people are working hard. And that's what teenagers do, get those jobs. They used to go out and pick corn. And I know as manufacturing improved, they're talking about improving machinery. So we don't need migrants to come here and work on farms. Everything's going to get better, faster, whatever. But at the end of the day, I know that there's too many companies that use employment agencies, that they only hire people that don't have permission to be here. I'm going to offend people if I say illegal. Some people call them migrants, people here illegally. They will use exclusively those people to fill up factories and then undercutting Americans that could get paid those benefits and everything else they're getting. And these are major corporations that aren't being held accountable for that. That's what we need to, what happened to the verified, E-Verify? Well, that's just like this, it's window dressing. Nobody was actually implementing that, because I know firsthand relatives that have jobs in HR, and they even, that were not Republican, that kind of looked back and said, we've got a factory of 600 people, 500 of them are illegals, and they're thinking, where are my black brothers and sisters going to be coming to get these jobs?
So is that an opportunity then for the Republican Party? Because the Republican Party has concentrated very heavily on deportation. They have not concentrated equally on holding these companies accountable who are knowingly hiring these illegal people.
Like in that weed farm that they busted, and they had people there illegally working, but they had children working at a weed farm. So you're trying to tell me that the owner, maybe somebody could fake their papers and look like they're legal, but a 14-year-old is a 14-year-old. You can't tell me you didn't know that kid picking the weed was 14. We need to see some of those people marched out with the plastic white handcuffs and made an example of and say, you're just not going to get a slap on the wrist and then go on and do it all over again. And we need to be, I think Republicans and Democrats are guilty of this getting fat on this cheap labor and taking advantage of that. And it's time to call that's over. You got to go. You got to go to jail.
So you heard it here first. This is the first time. Look, Stephanie Trussell, as a tried and true Republican,
unapologetic,
but can still hold them accountable when she sees opportunities to do something better. So I like that right off.
Because we have to hire. You have a business, I have a business. I have to be on the up and up and hire, and I want to hire people in my community. I want to hire hardworking people and let them, move up in the world. And I can't just, my business is so small, we just can't fudge paperwork and all that. It's just not right. And we just need to make sure that, I think all throughout the campaign season, Trump told us what he was going to do, and that's why he got elected. And I know right now people are looking like, oh, it's so ugly, and a lot of it is exaggerated, but we just got to make America great again, and that includes shutting our borders. And we can't blame Trump. We got to blame the last administration that allowed all these people to come in for 4 years, just nonstop every day. And who's going to feed them? Why is there a housing crisis? Well, we've got so many people here coming here demanding more houses. All those issues, that's like you taking in 1 or 2 extra people in your house, and you don't think that's going to affect your budget. I mean, that's just, come on now, that's just whatever. So, so it is what it is right now. We're not even a good 6 months into his administration, and I know people, and I'm not, they think of us being not compassionate, and I certainly care about everybody, and I understand why they want to come to America. It is the greatest country on the planet.
I'm not compassionate. I'm not compassionate at all. I used the example, I remember on my radio show, we were talking about how the migrants in Chicago, they were complaining about the free food they were being given.
Yeah. In New York too, they testified they didn't like the food.
The food didn't meet their culinary standards.
Yeah, right.
And I said on my radio show, hey, if I came to your house, you come home tonight, I'm sitting at your dinner table, and then you bring out dinner and you feed me.
Right.
Who is this stranger in my house? You go ahead and feed me anyway. And then I say, what is this you just put in front of me?
I'm vegan. Right.
I need a fillet. Blah, blah.
Is this gluten? Like, how dare you? And what did New York do? New York gave them debit cards or whatever to feed them. I mean, come on, come one, come all. And I know what it says on the Statue of Liberty. And but I mean, we are a country made up of migrants. But what's so great about America? When you come to America, you become American. If I were to move to Germany, if I were to move to Switzerland, for obvious reason, I wouldn't become German. You know what I mean? America is a melting pot. It's an idea. And if you come here, lately I volunteer every weekend, and I volunteer with immigrants, legal immigrants, and without me talking politics, because we're volunteering. And the young man came here with his family because his father got a job and he got transferred here. This young man, a college student, cannot work for 3 years. And he wants to work, so he's volunteering where we volunteer. And then another one came here, he's a sushi chef, and he talks with a very thick accent. And I wasn't talking politics, because this is not the setting. And he said, you shouldn't come here if you don't like America. And he made that analogy, having someone come into your home and be unappreciative. He said, and he's from India, and he said, I wish you would try to burn an Indian flag in India. He said, why are you here trying to burn the American flag? And he was very passionate about it because he took the right steps to come here. He's got 2 nephews that flunked the first opportunity to come, and he's trying to get them to come here legally because they get it, they understand it. The most unappreciative people of the American dream and what it means to be American are the ones that were born here, and they can't say, that's kind of my litmus test. Can you say that America is the greatest country in the world? Can you say you're proud to be an American? And they just get, I can't say that. I'm not saying America's perfect, but it's just certainly just an idea, a dream like no other country would my story be possible, and so many other stories be possible. Because when I talk to the woman that braids my hair, and she's from Senegal, she tries to explain to me they don't have social service agency. If you're poor, your church has to feed you, your family has to feed you, and that's one of her passions. She wants to get her degree here and go back and help her people. But in America, anything. We're the only place that has, kind of chunky poor people. I mean, you're going to eat if you're here, you know what I mean? So that's I don't want to say it. I'm a big girl, but I'm not judging anybody. But we don't have distended bellies and people just starving, because there's a program on a program to help you get your,
To Stephanie's point, listen, do this. Go to China. Go to
India.
Russia. Go to India or Brazil or Eastern Europe. Try to go to Uzbekistan and go over there and run out of money, and then go to the local government and tell them, hey, I need you to give me a place to stay, food to eat, medical attention when free medical attention, and see how that works out for you. Because there's someone out there who's watching this video who's going to say, oh, they're so
mean,
they're so cruel,
how dare they? But I love when I'll turn on the radio show and I hear a host and they're reading the immigration laws of a country. You can't own property if you live here, and they go through this whole thing, and then they'll say, these are the immigration laws of Mexico. And I'm like, whoa, if we implemented that, they would call us xenophobes, but that's what Mexican laws are. They get it. And I think about the fact that, this is a whole different topic, why is China buying our farmland? Can we go over there and buy farmland? That's like, they're our mortal enemy. Why would we allow them to be in control of our food, our medicine, or even buying these companies, this land near military installation? Sure. I don't understand what's going on with that. There's so many areas that we're just letting stuff go. We're going to look up. We better learn Mandarin, because we're going to, in order to get some food and some medicine, you might have to speak it. It's unbelievable how they just haven't been guarding what's American and what it means to be an American. And we, again, come one, come all. But you're coming here to assimilate. You can still hold on to your culture, but you want to be an American and you want to wave that flag.
And more importantly, and this is the other thing that I don't understand from the progressive left, as a sovereign nation, you have the right to say how many can come into your country, and you get to set the standards for who gets to come into your country.
Exactly.
Again, to your point, xenophobia is thrown around when Trump, and again, I'm an independent conservative, so
that's okay. We're working on you.
I'm sorry.
You got to drink the tea. But then we're gonna brainwash you.
I always say it opposite. I'm a conservative independent.
Okay.
But when Trump would say, "Hey, we don't want people who are coming over here who are the poorest, or who have nothing nothing to contribute," and someone will look at the Statue of Liberty and say, "But give me your poor, your tired, wretched, yearning to breathe free, the huddled masses, blah blah blah." But again, when the Statue of Liberty was erected,
you had to go through Ellis Island.
You had to go through
have
Ellis
a sponsor.
Island.
You had to make sure you didn't have diseases.
They
and you weren't
knew
sick.
who you were, what you had to have a skill.
Right. Yeah. And if you promise, like, if they could come through Ellis Island today and you say, sign something that I promise not to take advantage of social service agencies. Okay, let's talk about it. What are you going to come here? And my husband had a job with this corporation, and they thought about promoting him to be over the Canadian branch. And I remember their laws there. They had to make sure there was nobody in Canada that could do that job. He eventually turned that opportunity down.
Only 2 provinces in Canada, and I know this from my day job, Ontario and Quebec.
Yep.
Those are the only 2 provinces in Canada that they will even allow someone to come into the country and do any work.
Canada first, which is okay.
All of the other provinces, you have to be a Canadian resident to do a job in Canada.
Do they call them xenophobes? No, they're just about protecting and make sure their people are taken care of.
And that's our neighbor to the north.
Right. So
our second largest trading partner. Yeah. So to your point, our neighbor to the north, Canada, our neighbor to the south, Mexico, they protect their people and their markets, but again, I wonder how much of that is just American greed. And I'm not even talking about corporations. I'm talking about the person who will walk out of who will walk past a mom and pop shop to go into Walmart because they can save a few cents. The person who will walk into a Best Buy to look at a television, but then they'll go home, and as they're walking out of the door, order it from Amazon so they can save a few cents. Right. So it's that culture of driving to the lowest possible cost, and then people also forget that labor.
Yes.
Everything is supply and demand, including labor. So if you or I, if we had 10 people who walked into our business today and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a job and I'm happy to accept minimum wage,"
Right.
we'd be great.
Yay. Right. Yeah. Okay.
Great. But if we hang a sign and says, "Hey, I'm going to pay $20 an hour," and no one
shows up.
applies, then we know that we have to pay more than $20 an hour. And that's what people forget when we talk about labor and we talk about how much people are getting paid and you should raise the minimum wage and the minimum wage hasn't been raised in so long. The reason why it hasn't been raised is because there are still people out there who are willing to work for that wage.
And we shouldn't call it minimum wage, David. We should call it a starting wage. Because this is a job, your first job. This is how you're starting. You don't wait to get your first job at 40. You get it at 16. Even if you don't go to college, you get the job, you keep the job, graduate from high school, get married. Don't have kids till you get married. And then when you get married, stay married, then have kids. That's your way out of poverty right there. And so when they said, "Oh, I can't believe Walmart is only paying people X amount to hand somebody a shopping cart," well, that's not a skill. It has to be according to what skills you have, and people don't make that correlation. Now, I love Walmart, and I always joke that I can't live more than 15 minutes away from a Walmart as a mom with 5 kids growing, trying to feed my family, having an economic limitations of what we will and will not spend.
Sure.
But I like the quality of what I'm getting from Walmart, and that's what a small business owner, I hope people might pay a little bit more, even though we try to be competitive, because they like the quality of service that they're getting, the quality of the food or whatever. So that is something. And I think about, you mentioned Best Buy. When you walk in Best Buy sometimes, it's like, hello, you can't find anybody. And then you can say, "Oh, I'm looking for whatever," and you go over, they may walk you to the area, but sometimes they just point. And you get over there's one. And you're like, "Let me go on my phone." You get in the parking lot, and you Amazon, and then sometimes when I order from Amazon, especially for our business, I'm working and I say, "Oh, we need more," whatever. By the time I get home, it beats me home. It's on my doorstep. So that part, it's like, man, I could feel guilty sometimes because there's nothing more important to me than service and saying hello, because I know we make touches with every customer and greeting them after they eat. I want to make sure they come back because there's a lot of restaurants on that corner.
Absolutely.
And they came into mine and I'm like, yes. And we don't have a drive-through. If they come on a rainy day, we're like, "Thank you for coming in,"
Sure.
And so when I go somewhere and I spent, like $90 getting a manicure, pedicure, whatever, and there's 3 people in that salon, I'm walking out and not one person says, "Thank you, come back." That kind of makes me mad. I'm like, man, I kiss people's butt for $10 for a hot dog. I'm all over, like wiping the table down. I'm giving them napkins, and I just spent $100, and you don't give me that service. And so that's something that's important. But I always feel kind of guilty. Now, if I had an opportunity to if a mom paused something a little bit more, I went to a farmer's market, and I just ordered popcorn that you make yourself, and I never do that. So I've been making this popcorn from this farmer's market at this Homeschool Association thing I went to, and I'm looking at what the shipping would be, but I want to get that popcorn. It's so good, and I'm willing. I mean, it's so much more expensive than the popcorn I might be able to get at Walmart or whatever, but it's worth it. And that's what I'm thinking about, quality over, I'm talking about popcorn. I'm not talking about buying a Tesla or something, but
the principle still applies.
Yeah, that's so I don't mind spending a little bit more if it's a good product. And so, I do feel bad about the big box stores making the mom and pop stores,
Well, just for the record, you will never catch me in a Walmart.
Oh my gosh, you sound like one of my friends. It's like, what do they sell their walls? I just love me some Walmart. It's just a good quality. Where do you buy your groceries then?
I never go to Walmart.
Where do you go?
I go to Jewel. I go to Tony's. I'll go to Amazon Fresh.
Oh yeah.
I'll go, but I.
You don't do Walmart?
I can't do
Walmart.
Walmart.
With Walmart?
I just we don't even have to discuss that in this right here.
But I know. But you say, but you're not the only person. But I like McDonald's, what they built. I like Walmart. I like good American companies that have built these amazing entities, and that the fact you can start off with nothing and build up.
No, I like the story.
It, but a lot of people don't like Walmart.
I haven't had McDonald's in the last 20 years. I had McDonald's once.
Okay.
And the only reason I had it is because I was traveling for business, and when I got to the airport, I hadn't eaten.
And
that was the only thing.
And you know what you're getting.
That was the only thing that was open, but other than that.
See, I like McDonald's because you can start as a fry person and work your way up to be president of the company. I like the story. I like that I worked there at 15, the Maywood McDonald's, and I worked my way up to be a manager. And back in the 80s, it was a lot of black millionaires. We had the Black Owners Association. We had a ball every year. And I just love McDonald's. When it's done right, it's a great product. I wouldn't say eat there every day. I mean, I can't, I might have a breakfast sandwich once in a while because I'm just old and diabetic, so I shouldn't be eating it.
She keeps saying that she's old and looking like she's 45,
no,
46.
June 2nd, I turned 60, and so I'm like, and my son turned 40 a couple days ago, so it's no more pretending that I'm young. So I'm trying to eat better, but I love McDonald's because of the fact that wherever you go is generally the same, and you should get the same product. And if it's done well, it's a great product. If it's done poorly and bad service, that's a whole nother story. But I like good American companies that give you an opportunity to just move up and do well. And if I could own a McDonald's franchise one day, that would be phenomenal. But
you just mentioned something. You just talked about the black millionaire McDonald's operators and how they have their organization and their annual ball. You and I both African Americans, you and I both business owners. I can't tell you how many times on my radio show that I have black people call into my radio show and say, I remember this one caller specifically said, and I'm quoting him now, because I don't speak like this, but he said, ain't no white man at a bank going to give a black man a loan.
Was this in 1954?
This was in the last year or so.
Oh.
I have black people calling in all the time saying the FICO scoring system is racist. The banking system is racist. You can't get a bank loan. Nobody's going to sell a business to a black person. No one's going to, if you do even get the business, that nobody's going to, they're not going to come to the business as soon as they see a black person who owns it.
Just defeatist attitude,
So speak to that as someone who ran for lieutenant governor, someone who's running for House member, and who's a business owner. Speak to our minority population out there who is still under this misconception or misperception that as an African American, you cannot be successful. As a matter of fact, I'll take it a step further. You have some people in our community that your bona fides as a black person are lower unless you're struggling.
Right, like you're not one of us. Like you gotta be Will Smith's character in
Fresh Prince.
Because if you're Carlton, you're not really black.
Exactly.
But Will Smith came there to live with the dad and Carlton's dad and he was the example and showed him whatever. So we're not a monolith. We're a wide spectrum. There were black people that have been rich for generations. There were blacks that owned slaves. And we had poor blacks. So we're all not defined by that. But I think a lot of it has to do with these organizers, with these community organizers and these leaders that make it sound like it's 1965 Selma every day. We just can't make it, and we still riding in the back of the bus. And I think about a freed slave. Okay, you're free now, and they're obviously they have this packaging. People knew that they were black. They had to. What if they had that attitude? Ain't no bank gonna give me. They went out and decided, I'm gonna open up a store. I'm gonna have a product. James Washington Carver inventing all the things with peanuts. You're not gonna fail. You just like, this is what I'm gonna do. I got this, and not to feel that you got to have a minority program. Your alderman's gonna get you into this thing to do that. Just do it. If you want to do it, just go out there. Everybody wants you to achieve. Nobody's out there trying to keep their boot on your neck and they'll say, well, white men are worried about the browning of America. They're out there trying to work hard every day. They don't care that 8 black men open up a business. What is that? This mentality that our Democrat leaders, I'm going to say it, too many of them are saying that, especially on Black Talk Radio, because I'm obsessed with Black Talk Radio, especially in Chicago. I listen to it. And some of the things they say, at some point I had to turn it off because I'm like, this is just so negative. I never hear another opinion saying, maybe that's not so true. But don't believe that it's nothing you can't do. In America, and as I said, I grew up on the west side riding the Pulaski bus, riding the Madison bus, riding the train. People get on, they selling socks with a phone, $1 socks, and we got a phone book, and this hustle. So, how can you not get that? And you look up and see so many black millionaires and billionaires now, and they say you can't be what you don't see.
But you know what? If you're a black millionaire or a black billionaire, you're lucky.
Right? Yeah, you just got one of those. You're the exception, not the rule.
You're the token. They had to let a couple of them in
there just to come on now. And everybody's out there making, even the ones like Ibram Kendi and all those black socialists. but they're selling a book and they want you to buy it, but they're somehow living well. Black Lives Matter, we know what that means now, buying large mansions, living well, didn't pay for one black funeral of a kid that got shot on the south side of Chicago, but that's another story. We can make it. It's nothing keeping you from doing it. Our ancestors just did all the hard work. They rode on the back of the bus. They picked the cotton so that we can live in their inheritance right now. This is our inheritance, living in the greatest country in the world. You can invent something. You can go on YouTube. I mean, there's no way, if you want to do it, there's no way you're going to fail, but you got to be willing to put the work in.
You know what? I'm so glad that you came out and we had this conversation. We could talk for hours.
Right.
But let's end it here. Go ahead and tell our listeners, everybody out there, how they can follow your campaign and how they can support you.
Well, I'm Stephanie Trussell, running in Illinois House District 42 out in DuPage County. I'm determined to go down to Springfield to work hard, not to bring new bills and taxes to the hardworking people in Illinois, but to make people want to stay in Illinois and not flee. So I'm Stephanie Trussell on social media. Trussell for Illinois is my website, and I am just so ready to go down there and do something about 78 Democrats over 40 Republicans. The nuns taught me that that's an improper fraction. I'm going down there to do something about that.
Stephanie Trussell, thank you so very much.
It was my pleasure. Oh my gosh, this is too much fun, I tell you. Yeah.